So, although it hasn't been officially confirmed, it seems that the rumours about Millie Gibson leaving Doctor Who at some point early in Season 2 are true, and that Varada Sethru will be replacing her as the new companion. Some set photos recently seem to confirm that. But I should stress there is still no official word from the BBC. But given that it looks like it is indeed happening, what kind of changeover are we going to get? How is this handover going to happen? Where is Varada's character going to come from in universe? I've got a few ideas that I want to put to you, and I want to hear your thoughts as well if you've got any more or what you think of these ones. One of these ones includes something about regeneration, but we'll get to that. Hi, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like and consume, including a lot of Doctor Who, so if you like Doctor Who, hit that subscribe button. Now, as I said, we're talking about the new, well, it's not news anymore, we're talking about what might happen and how this changeover between companions might happen at some point in Season 2, because we had that news. I talked about that news in a previous video, or the kind of rumours that were going around in a previous video, which you can watch here if you so wish. But today I've got 4 main ideas about how this new character could be introduced to us as an audience, where they might come from, and how it might tie into the plot. So let's crack on. The first one is just kind of the most boring one. It's kind of what Russell has done every other time he's had a changeover of companion. The previous one leaves, the next episode, or maybe in some cases after a Christmas special, but mostly the next episode, you get a brand new modern day companion introduced, happens to meet the Doctor during one of his adventures, and he likes her enough to invite her onto the ship, to the TARDIS, to go travelling with him. That's another possibility, but boy is it a boring one, because it's basically what happens every time. I think we need something a bit different for a companion introduction for once. But I had to mention it because, let's face it, it is a possibility, and it is kind of what Russell has done every other time. Going slightly more interesting then is if there's a crossover of their times on the TARDIS. We know Millie is in a handful, maybe 3 episodes, I think the article said, of Season 2. And we don't know when Varada's character is going to be introduced. So perhaps even they are in some episodes together. Now, the classic series did this quite a bit. They'd often have the companion, outgoing companion and incoming companions in a story together, and that would be the kind of crossover story where that would be the story that the old companion decided to leave and the story where the new companion decided to join, all in one story. Modern Who hasn't really done that, so they could indeed do that as something a bit different. But I think even more interesting would be if Varada came on right at the beginning of Season 1 and had several episodes with Millie on the TARDIS. Now, I've speculated that Millie might be leaving gradually and become a part-time companion anyway. I speculated that in the last video on this subject. So in that case, maybe she would join and Millie would pop in for the occasional adventures. But I would quite like to, it could be interesting to see them have adventures together before Millie finally departs for good. So that's option 2. A bit more interesting than option 1. But maybe even more interesting is option 3. Let's have a non-modern day companion. Now, the location filming photos we've seen with Varada so far have both her and the Doctor running in period costume of roughly looking like it might be the 1950s they're in. Look like they might be kind of like 1950s America. It's kind of that kind of Grease style outfits from, when they're at a prom or something like that. It's that kind of outfit of the 1950s. Looks like they could have been at a dance or something in the 1950s. And yeah, she could well have just travelled back. They could have gotten some period appropriate clothing from the TARDIS wardrobe for an adventure in the 1950s America. It's possible. But what if she's from the 1950s? Wouldn't that be so much more interesting? Doctor Who, modern Doctor Who anyway, since 2005, hasn't really had anything other than mostly modern day companions. They've had a couple from the future, they've had Captain Jack, they've had Nardole, but the main companion has always been a modern day companion. Yeah, partly I get why that's to give the audience something to relate to, but hear me out, that gets a bit boring after a while, and we've had, what, 18, 19 years of that now? I would quite like something a bit different. So having a companion from the 1950s doesn't make them so far back in time like Victorian times or earlier that they're completely alienated from us. We've all grown up watching things like Grease. They may not be us, but they are close enough to us that we can still relate to them in some ways. And I just think it's something interesting and new to do. Now, you could do this idea with the previous idea and still have some crossover episodes with both of them in, or you could have this with Millie leaving, and then the next episode, Varada joins. They go to the Doctor ends up in the 1950s, meets Varada's character, and they carry on from there. To be honest, if they're going to go for the ending and then a new beginning the next episode, I would prefer something like this where the companion is from a different setting than modern day Earth. That would at least add a bit of interest to it. And then the final one, the big one for this video, is something that got suggested many times by many different people on the comments to my last video, and I really like. And that is that this isn't a completely different character at all. Varada isn't playing anybody else, she's playing Ruby Sunday, because Ruby Sunday regenerates. Now obviously this wouldn't be the first time that a character other than the Doctor has surprise regenerated. We had River Song after all, but while some people kind of class her as a companion, it's not quite the same. Just imagine this comes out of nowhere, you're not expecting it, something happens to Millie and suddenly the glowing happens, she regenerates, it's a surprise regeneration. We've already got the mystery of where she comes from. If we haven't found it out by that point, maybe the mystery continues. The mystery box continues into Varada's tenure ship onto the TARDIS, and she is a new regeneration of Millie. Maybe Millie doesn't know what's going, maybe new regeneration of Ruby Sunday even. Maybe Ruby doesn't know why this is happening because she got abandoned as a baby. She didn't know she was a Time Lord or whatever. As for whose baby she could be, there are all the possibilities I went through in the last video. Or not the last video, my video on mystery boxes. There's the one, she could be Susan's child, in which case that would make her the Doctor's great-granddaughter. She could be the Rani, she could be any number of Time Lords she could be the daughter of. Now, as some people pointed out in my last video, there's nothing to say that the ability to regenerate passes on genetically from parent to child. In fact, in some stories, it has been specifically said that's not how it happens, and implied that you get given the ability to regenerate when you attend the academy and graduate as a Time Lord. And partly this has been backed up by things like standing in front of the schism or whatever. But we know now from the Timeless Child thing that it has something to do with genetics and being altered. It's whether or not that needs to be altered for everyone, or if that can be passed down. But look, even if you go by the mantra that so far it hasn't been able to be passed down genetically, when you have kids you have to go through whatever process it is to get given that, maybe this is evolution, the freak of nature, that the thing that changes, and from now on everyone from that descendancy downwards will have this ability to pass it down. Maybe it hasn't happened before, but then the genes evolve and they do something different. That's how evolution works. So even if you stand by the fact that this is not how regeneration has worked before, it doesn't mean it can't in the future. Things can change, especially something that was given to the Time Lords through genetic experiments in the first place. Hey, that's a possibility. It could also, as I said, add to that mystery. And if you want to hear more about the mystery boxes that Russell T Davies has been building up for this series, check out this video right here, which is about all of the mystery boxes that Russell T Davies has already built up for this series, and ask the question, are there too many? Check it out, and I'll see you for more Doctor Who videos soon. Goodbye.